life. There is a new body. So they didn't understand resurrection as you die and all of a sudden you are with God. How do you understand what will happen at the resurrection? How do you understand the resurrection now?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not sure about that. Doesn't it say in the Bible that everyone will rest after death? But then how do you explain all these, people that come back with their stories and they immediately find themselves at the gates of, heaven?
Yeah.
I don't get,
Okay.
there's so many ideas out there.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. How do you understand that? Where do we go when we die?
To be absent from the body is to be present with God.
Okay, so you feel your understanding would be when you die, you're present with God.
And Jesus told the thief on the cross, today you'll be with me in paradise.
Okay, so your understanding is that you're immediately in the presence of God.
But the resurrection is another event that will happen at the end of time, like you were speaking of.
Okay, so the resurrection is something different. So when we are present with God, immediately following death, what does that look like? Any thoughts? When we, immediately after death, if we are present with God, what does that look like?
I don't know.
Don't know? Don't know. Don't really know. Were you going to say something, Katie? No? Somebody up there?
No, I think it's the joy that passes all understanding.
Okay. Okay. So resurrection to you is the joy that surpasses all understanding. I think that there's so many ways that we understand the resurrection. If we were really be totally honest here and went around the room, and a lot of us would just say, I don't know. I don't know really what that's going to look like, and that's okay. I think that the way that the church, the way that we would understand resurrection. Thank you, Mary. Is that that when we die, when we have this physical death, that we are not, that we are whole people. That there was a lot of belief in the ancient times of kind of this dualistic nature of people, that we were part spirit and part flesh.
Modern concept.
It is a very modern concept, but it's not a biblical concept. Biblically, God made us whole people. He made us body, mind, and spirit all together. A very holistic view was the Judeo-Christian view of humanity. So, but there were the Gnostics that were at the time of Christ that said the body, the flesh, anything material is bad and couldn't have been created by God. But there's this divine spark in us that's good. And so when we die, the body doesn't matter anyway, so that just decays. And this divine spark goes and returns to God. And that's how a lot of us kind of think about death and resurrection now. From church doctrine, I think we would say that when we die, we are asleep with God, whatever that looks like. We are with God, but that our spirits and our bodies don't separate from each other. Now, then you have people that have all these near-death experiences, I've been with people that have, their relatives are in the room with them when they're dying. People come to meet them. So church doctrine and human experience don't always necessarily totally align. So we have to kind of leave that in God's hands. The important thing would be to say that whatever happens, that we are with God. And if we are asleep and we are just waiting for the resurrection, that it's all good. It's not like we're waiting in grief and sadness. We're not waiting in Sheol like the Jews at the time understood. There's no, it's that in an instant, in the twinkling of an eye, we'll be with God. So if we're asleep in God, and it's all good. And at the resurrection, it's like there's been no time passing. So I think we have to leave that a little bit in God's hands. And the thing that we never would want to do is say, well, you have to understand it exactly this way, because that can really shake some people's faith. Okay? We can't pretend to know all of the mysteries of God. And so what we can say is that we're with God, and at the resurrection, we are fully with God. Okay? But the resurrection does mean a bodily resurrection. And nobody expected a resurrection. So what I wanted to do, let's do this really quick. I want us to look at the 4 different gospel accounts of what happens at the resurrection, because when Jesus dies on the cross and is placed in the tomb, no one expects him to rise again, even though he's explained it to them, even though he's told them it's going to happen. No one expects it, even those closest to him. So Jean, would you take Mark, and we could just find a couple verses in these different in the different gospel accounts. Karen, would you look in Matthew for a few verses at who discovers the empty tomb? I'm sorry, can you hear me? Look in Matthew for the resurrection account. Who discovers the empty tomb? And then Katie, is it possible to do that on your? Okay.
I'll try.
Okay, why don't you take Luke?
I'll take them on.
And Kissy, can you look in the Gospel of John for the resurrection account? So let's start with Mark, and you just have to read a few verses just so we get a flavor of what happens.
Ready?
Okay, so Jean's going to read
This
from
is from Mark chapter 16.
Okay.
And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him, being Jesus, of course. And very early on the first day of the week, they went to the tomb when the sun had risen. And they were saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the door of the tomb?" And looking up, they saw that the stone was rolled back. It was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were amazed. And he said to them, "Do not be amazed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him as he told you." And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had come upon them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid.
Okay,
Good enough?
that's good. The women didn't expect this. If we kept reading in the longer ending of Mark, the disciples certainly didn't expect it.
Even after being told.
Even after being told.
When they heard it, they did not believe it. Later, Jesus appears and he rebukes them for their laughter, refusing to believe those who had seen him.
Yes.
So that unbelief could